tōtu tau mai I waho kia tau mai te mauri tū, te mauri oho, te mauri ora, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pass it back to you.
Thank you. Apologies now, Fleur, I'm just struggling with 10,000 screens here.
Certainly, I can read the resolution if that makes it easier for you.
And you've populated it with the up-to-date information.
That's correct.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So the resolution would read that the apologies received from councillors Anne Court, Steve McNally and Penato Kleskovich be accepted and leave of absence granted.
I'm happy to move that, Mr. Chair.
Kelly
Thank
seconds.
you. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against if any? Thank you. We've got no deputations noted. The next item is confirmation of the previous open agenda minutes, which starts on page, it says page 1 on the bottom right of mine. I'm checking what page in the pack. It's page 10, I believe, in the PDF that was circulated.
That's correct. Beg your pardon.
Yep. So any comments on page 1 of those?
Happy to move.
You're happy to move?
Second.
Is there any discussion or corrections of factual matters?
No.
Any matters arising? Anyone wishes to raise? None, in which case the motion's been that the minutes, I'm just scanning back through. Apologies, I've just jumped off a plane and haven't had a chance to print anything.
I'm happy to read them again, Graham, if that's of assistance.
Yeah, if you could just read the resolution, that would be good.
Certainly, that the Te Miromiro Assurance Risk and Finance Committee confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 31 October 2023 are true and correct.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against if any? Carried. Now, as per the pre-meeting discussion with the order of the agenda, I'd like us to move into PX now so that we can have our open discussion with the auditor in accordance with good governance practice. And then I propose once we've had that, we move back out and move to the formal discussion on the financial statements. And that will just mean that Benny's not held unnecessarily there, and he can carry on. No doubt he's got a numerous long list of items to deal with for the day.
Can I just ask that we add to that motion that we allow Benny to be a part of PX for this meeting?
And probably also our chief executive and...
no, they're allowed in PX.
They are allowed in PX.
It's only just Benny. The external.
Excellent. If we got that, Fleur?
Yes, I have. I'm sorry, I can't share my screen with you today. I beg your pardon.
No, if you could perhaps read the resolution, a shortened version of it. I guess the key bit that we need to resolve rather than all the long list of matters that sit
sorry,
underneath
just
it.
1 moment, please. My screen has just frozen briefly. Just 1 moment.
I'm happy to move the recommendation that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, so that we can have a free and frank discussion as elected members and with our auditor. And also a part of that is item 6.1 in my pack, which is to confirm our previous public excluded minutes.
Order.
Perfect. Second, thanks, Kelly. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against if any? Carried. So now if you could just confirm when everyone has dropped off.
Except for Jonathan and Guy
and
Benny.
And Benny. Now Guy and Jonathan will have information that's pertinent to these discussions.
Who is the holder of this meeting, Mr. Chair? Would you also like our recording to be paused for this section?
Yes, it should be paused for this section.
Thank you, governance team.
Just want to confirm that you do not require legal. Carla should not remain.
I'd have no problem with legal counsel on the basis of privilege. Benny, have you got anything that you believe that legal counsel should be excluded for?
No, Graham.
Thank you.
I can confirm the recording has started.
Perfect. We have, just scanning up through my screens here to get to the right page. We have a draft annual report and a supporting paper, which has been produced. I'm assuming there, Jonathan, you will speak to this report.
That's correct, Grant. Right.
So any
Take it
comments?
away.
Yes, you carry on, Jonathan. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks all, and again, great to have Benny to cover off that earlier. From my standpoint, this is really the follow-on paper from the 31 October ARF meeting, which really just sort of sets the scene from that previous update where the draft auditor's report and draft annual report were tabled. As noted by myself and also from Benny earlier, that the audit report is now substantially complete, subject to some minor updates from audit and staff. But of course, it is pending, of course, the larger piece of work that's currently being conducted by Benny and his team in and around the audit, or forensic audit. As far as the next steps, and as per the recommendation here, it was originally noted to receive that auditor's report and provide recommendation from ARF to council to adopt the annual report and to authorise myself to make any non-material changes and grammatical changes as required. As noted, I guess from Benny and the team, they are now subject to closing out those final queries and audits, close to issuing their verbal clearance and providing their audit opinion, but not prior to closing out those final checks. The good thing to note, and the key thing that I wanted to draw out for today, was around that there hasn't actually been any material movements in the actual financial performance or position since the 31 October update to the ARF committee. I think, as noted at the bottom of page 16, total comprehensive revenue and expense moved by circa 200,000, as did the net assets from a position standpoint. And there'd only been some reclassification between certain lines within the cash flow. So there wasn't actually any strong or material movements there. It was merely to do with disclosures, notes and extra detail, as Benny touched on earlier in his report. Looking at page 17, I have provided a summary of some of the key financials of the annual report. Now, looking at the previous reports to council and ARF, this is something that hadn't actually been done before, but I thought it would be prudent to at least provide some summary financials and also note some key changes that we've seen from one year to the next, particularly around new standards and so on and so forth. If we look at where we are from, I guess, the operating result, we ended the year, the 2023 financial year, with a $2.8 million net surplus compared to a budget of 17.4. Now, when you look at why that was so much lower, it's actually driven by both sides of the P&L. One, the revenue was up, but the revenue was down, but also the expenses were up. The revenue was down by approximately 4.2 million, which is mostly around a lower component of rates revenue, which we received, but also about $6 million less in our subsidies and grants, most of which was in and around new works, largely roading and community services. There was some partial offset in that revenue with some extra other revenue that was achieved over and above what was budget. From the expense side, as noted, expenses were up. We're actually, when you look across the year, we're approximately about $800,000 more in our interest expense as we start to get into that new environment with higher interest costs and also increased borrowings. There was also higher expenses and other expenses, which is mostly around the external services, contract management, and contract professional fees as well. Thankfully, there was some offset to that, so we did have some lower personnel costs by about 2.3 million. So when you look at that and just summarising that, the revenue down, by 4.2 million and expenses being up by about 10.3. That's the key drivers there that we saw from the statement of financial performance. As far as the actual cash position, we ended the year at around 18.8 million in our cash position, which is actually up a little bit from what we saw in the prior year. Now, when I dug into that a little bit more, it was mostly to do with taking a slightly more risk-averse stance, and also with the structure changes and the not having a permanent CE in place. There was a deliberate aspect to hold slightly more cash on hand in order to, I guess, weather the storm of any volatility as we started to solidify that structure. Debt remained relatively steady. We ended the year at around $105.5 million, of which 55 of that was more short-term. So again, with that, we saw that large swing with a lot of our longer-term debt starting to fall from non-current liabilities with longer-term into that shorter period as well. Outside of that, we had an aspect in and around our capital expenditure, which, although being pretty well in line with our previous years, was substantially less than what was originally budgeted. So again, that's no surprise. That's actually quite consistent with what we saw with previous reports to council, particularly with the carry forwards, etc. So we were budgeted around 130 million, and we executed around $69.3 million in capital expenditure. The key areas where we were under, or what was driving that result, was mostly around the wastewater aspects, but also a little bit in district facilities as well. Moving or touching on just some of the key differences or key updates from what we've seen in prior year. We had two new standards which came into effect over the course of the year. One being IPSAS 41, which is to do with our financial assets and liabilities. That, from what Benny touched on as well, did create a lot of work, and it also highlighted a lot more work that still needs to be done in order to actually get and make it easy to apply the standard and make it also easier for audit to follow through and follow the workings accordingly. That's one of the aspects that I'm going to be working in with Benny and also with our IT team in order to build the appropriate reports to make access to the right information easier and more readily available so that we can generate that. Long and short was there wasn't any major impact or significant impact from the application of that standard, which was also the same story for our next one, which was around FRS 48, which is around our service performance reporting. Also, as touched on by Benny, that that didn't result in any material changes, but it's going to be an aspect where we'll probably continue to develop and improve upon meeting those service reporting guidelines and key principles. The main aspect that we saw in that regard, or inclusion that we had, was in and around extra disclosure, mostly around our funding impact statements and our service performance. So that's really around where funding was obtained and how it was actually used, which we didn't really have as much in previous years. So that was probably the biggest change there that we've incorporated. Outside of that, I've also touched on page 18, just some of the key and critical accounting estimates, assumptions, and judgments. And no surprise, they are pretty much all in regards to estimating fair value, looking at useful life of property, plant, and equipment, and looking at provision aspects, which I've noted there as to more detail in the particular notes. Outside of that, it just rounds off the rest of that report on the bottom of page 18 with just some of the reasoning for the recommendation, which is a requirement under the Local Government Act, and also touching that there's no financial implications on for this particular report. I'll given the time, I'll pause there to see if there was any particular questions, but again, good to see that, I guess, Benny's part took centre stage, because that was the key critical aspect of today. Graham, I think you're on just mute there.
Apologies, yes, I did mute myself when I was having a wee cough earlier. Just the key thing about that financial instruments, it's about bringing in the recoverability of rates, and more to the point, when we will recover them, because there needs to be a discounted cash flow approach applied, and the data sets and assumptions needs, you know, it's a new standard and it's very complicated in a council situation. And that's the main issues. Now, with regard to the distributed draft accounts, I'm not sure whether members wish to have any further detail, because we were given a very full run through in the direct meeting, which under good governance process we should have as councillors and committee members with the auditor, with no other persons present, to allow a full and frank exchange. There, but Benny in summary confirmed that he's very happy with the numbers, and there are some disclosure stuff, and as Jonathan alluded to, they did some data analysis work, which they've had a few anomalies came up in that work at this stage, and we just need to do a little bit of work to make sure that they are false negatives, and that's really the key outstanding work that we have there. Now I see that Deputy Mayor Kelly has got a hand up. If I can perhaps hand over to you.
Oh, I just wondered before I launch into some comments that we maybe should move and second this, and I'll move it. But I am going to foreshadow a additional resolution.
I will. Good comment, because I too was going to look to potentially change the wording of this. My thinking, and see, and I've perhaps workshop this a little with you, Kelly, and under A, adopt the annual report for the year ended subject to the satisfactory resolution of the data analysis matters that our external auditor has still got some queries on, because if they do come back as an issue, then we will need to make amendments to the financial statements. But if they are false negatives, as we hope that they all are, that we will be able to adopt that. So I'm thinking potentially, yeah, I see.
I think that's different to what I was going to, but I support that.
Your thoughts, because we might have to collaboratively. But do we we'll need to ultimately move this for an amendment to be able to be registered.
Yep, so I'm happy to move.
So do we have a seconder?
McCord seconded. Saw his hand.
Yeah, I saw his hand move.
I can't remember your wording either.
So my thought was A as it stands, but after 2023, subject to the satisfactory resolution of the data analytics matters raised by the external auditor.
Hang on, I'm coming, guys. I'm typing that out for you.
Yeah, but someone that does better with typing than my two fingers would be
Just
useful.
so you know, Kelly, I am also
Oh,
typing
you
it out, and
managed
I
to get
can
it.
share my screen if you like. I'll just.
Mine was so just find my notes. Yep, great report. The annual report, happy to recommend that to council, but the attachment, the areas of audit focus that have been identified, this is always my favourite report of the year, and I like to get at least a quarterly snapshot of how we're doing on the issues that were identified at audit and how the internal operations are addressing them. So my amendment was to try and ensure that this makes it into the work program. And I don't want, I don't mean any offence, Graham, but I want, to make sure that it does have some regularity in coming to us. But I also wanted to see how everybody felt about, I forget what page, where is it? There was some area of focus, no, where is it? The details of findings, the formal risk, no, that's not it. Expenditure policy breach on page 160 of the agenda. I think it's hard to read this without understanding the context of what was reviewed. So it would be good if we could have a deep dive into the expenditure policy breach. I don't even think it was in relation to vehicle. I think it was something else.
Yep, I hear you and I agree with you. Perhaps can we look at getting the amendment I'm proposing first, which is it sits on the screen's not quite correct. Subject to satisfactory resolution of the data analytics. You had it in the chat.
Yes.
Of the data analytics.
As noted by the external auditor, but sorry, can we not have resolution in the resolution and just say result? Or
satisfactory
data analytics
clearance.
Clearance, yes, thank you.
Data analytics matters raised by the, or outstanding is probably outstanding. Data analytics matters outstanding. No, I'd move the outstanding to after the matters. Outstanding in the audit process or something like along those lines. And if I could be so bold to capture Kelly's one as a C.
Here's mine. And that Te Miromiro Committee have a deep dive into procurement and sensitive expenditure.
Sorry, just for clarity, Deputy Mayor Stratford, through you, the chair, are you happy for that to be a workshop or a briefing paper or deep dive?
Deep dive takes place in our Te Miromiro workshop.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Chair?
That is fine, and the one I was going to add, therefore, is a D. Just wait for the typing to complete so that we don't, as a D,
deep dive workshop, and then as D,
that at the February meeting and all subsequent meetings, there is a paper provided by management on the outstanding audit matters and the clearance thereof.
we moved and seconded it. Moko, did we? Are you happy with those changes, Kahika?
Happy to have it included as a part of the resolution rather than having it as an amendment.
Awesome. Same.
Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Through you, the chair, if you don't mind a quick tidy up there, Fleur to add request in the place of and in C. And also request at the beginning of
Yes.
D. Correct.
Can I just make a suggestion on C?
Yes, please.
I think we should just take out the deep dive language and just it should just say the request that the committee receive and review a detailed analysis in our Miromiro workshop. It's just more descriptive.
Sorry, deep divers, local government speak.
Okay.
I'll agree with Guy though. That's better. Just
Yeah, better
describes
wording.
what's happening.
So are the movers and seconders happy with those amendments?
Happy.
Which case I think the process is I should move the amendment. Do we have
I don't
Sorry.
think you need to.
You can move the full,
I'll
put it to a
move-
vote, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. In which case, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Okay, the next, is there any other matters that in this that anyone
Agenda.
wants to raise? And going back to the agenda, sorry, I'm having to whip up my screens again to get to the right place. We
No,
are at
that's
the
it.
stage of closing Karakia. Could I ask?
I'm happy to
Michael,
close us off,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. And thank you for the extraordinary meeting. May the sanctity of the words and the discussion shared resound not only within our minds but within the walls of these chambers. Ko te tapu ngā kōrero ka erike ki ngā pātū o tēnei whare ki ngā koko o mahara haumi e hui e aike.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kia ora,
Thank you.
Kahika. Thank you very much, Chair. Ka kite, everybody.